Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman presided over the Senate for the first time yesterday, since Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the Senate will no longer enforce its dress code for members. In reference to a potential looming government shutdown, Fetterman wrote on X yesterday, "If those jagoffs in the House stop trying to shut our government down and fully support Ukraine, then I will save democracy by wearing a suit on the Senate floor next week."
The Gray Zone's Max Blumenthal wrote a scathing response to that statement. Fetterman has insisted dressing like an adult toddler helped him return to work after a bout with depression. But now he says that he's willing to wear a suit if House jackoffs dedicate more U.S. billions to NATO's proxy war. Turns out he's more comfortable in World War III than a hoodie. This comes as President Joe Biden is expected to announce a new military aid package for Ukraine worth hundreds of millions of dollars, according to a United States official, as Zelensky visits Washington, D.C. The expected package will include capabilities to help Ukraine strengthen its air defenses ahead of the winter. More money to Ukraine.
More money to Ukraine. I got to give it to Max. That is a good line. He's more comfortable in his suit than in World War III.
Yeah.
I think a lot of leftists really cringed when they saw that tweet because, generally speaking, he has positioned himself as not a full-on leftist, but someone who's to the left of many Democrats in Congress. Yeah. There's a feeling that, you know, he suffered this stroke. It was
his
weeks
bout with
before.
Depression.
Yeah, like he's a sympathetic figure. You know, there's an inclination to be kind of anti-elitism and to want to conform to certain kind of dress codes. And so I think a lot of people were openly defending him and rooting for him for a long time. And then for him to come out and say, "Oh yeah, I'm willing to wear a suit," in exchange for the least popular policy proposal among both the far left and the far right in the country. It's such a drag.
I mean, it is. In my opinion, Fetterman is not a serious person. And I think this guy is a disgrace to the United States Senate. A dress code signals a lot of things. It signals respect for oneself, respect for your colleagues, respect for the history of the body being the United States Senate. When I was an undergrad at Morehouse College in Atlanta, we had to dress up once a week for Crown Forum. Crown Forum dates all the way back to Mays, Benjamin Elijah Mays, who was a mentor of Dr. King when he was a student at Morehouse. And Dr. Mays instituted the dress code because his belief was having to get up in the morning and prepare oneself showcases dignity, respect, pride. If you're a United States Senator, if I had to do that as an 18-year-old in college, why shouldn't a United States Senator who's supposed to represent an entire state showcase himself approved by wearing the proper attire? We can't host this show with a baseball cap and a hoodie and tank tops and whatever else.
Well, I've never tried, but let's see if I can push the limit.
So to me, you know, I think this sort of points to, Bri, a lowering of standards, generally speaking, in our culture. Some may not see it that way, but I think when you start opening Pandora's box here and there, what are the limitations? How low do we go? Do we just devalue all standards? And I'll say this quickly. I'm reminded of something that Edmund Burke once wrote 200 plus years ago, conservative philosopher. It's easier to destroy than it is to build. Certain values, certain constructs should be prized by society, particularly those of us in the West.
Right. Well, I talked about this a little bit with Robby yesterday. I personally agree largely that it's important to show respect for certain spaces and institutions. I feel my best when I'm kind of riding like a business casual at every point in my life. I love a blazer. I'm a blazer and jeans kind of a gal. I packed 3 blazers to go to a wedding last weekend for absolutely no reason. I just felt insecure not to bring my blazers with me. So I was raised as someone who needed to be smart casual when I got on an airplane. I, have been complimented by flight attendants who say, "Thank you so much for not wearing your pajamas on the airplane." So personally, that's how I feel. However, I think this is a non-issue. I think the bigger issue is all of the substantive ethical violations that happen in Congress, the insider trading, the voting for endless wars that haven't been congressionally approved, yada, yada, yada. And at the end of the day, I live in a society and I have to respect the fact that other people might not feel the same way that I do. I wouldn't want the airline to impose a rule saying that there's a dress code just because I personally like the way I feel and I like how people interact with me when I dress a certain way. And so I do think that if this were politically reversed and there were a conservative candidate who like to dress down or like to wear hunting gear or like to wear camo or like to wear a cowboy hat and boots, that people would be saying that it's the elitists in the Democratic Party who are trying to put everybody in a suit because they're classists and they don't understand how working people operate. I think that at the end of the day, that any punishment that John Fetterman or anybody else who wants to dress abnormally should be in the eyes of their constituents. If they don't trust him, if there's no public trust because of the way he looks, if his poll numbers go down because of the way he looks, that's his punishment. He has to contend with that. Sure. I don't know that we need more rules.
But do you need to change the dress code for the entire body to accommodate one man? I mean, customs of behavior do matter. You know, I was doing some research on child psychology, and studies indicate that when parents teach their children to sort of dress up, that institutes a lot of pride in that individual child. So why would we try to minimize these values, these constructs that are important? I agree that modernity is important and that it is an innate part of human nature to continue to move forward, if you will. But do we just dismiss all of our values just because someone feels a certain kind of way when they wake up in the morning? Well,
let me ask you this. The dress codes and norms have changed in Congress over time. Women weren't allowed to wear pants on the Senate floor until 1993, the same year that women's restrooms were first built off the Senate floor. In 2017, after protests, I'm reading from an article in NPR.
Sure.
After protests by female lawmakers, House Speaker Paul Ryan modified the rules to allow women to wear sleeveless dresses and open-toed shoes. The Senate followed suit just in 2019. That same year, as the first 2 Muslim congressional representatives took office, the House voted to permit religious headwear on the floor for the first time. So, you know, I'm open to
all of those things are a part of formal attire. All of them. Everything you listed is a part of formal attire.
So your objection is to a kind of a laissez-faire.
To him being a sloppy United States senator with zero respect for the body of the United States Senate. That's what I object to.
Can't you also be sloppy and kind of disrespectful in your dress while technically conforming to attire? I mean, people have made fun of Kirsten Sinema for some weird get-ups that technically comply. There's a very popular account, Derek something, on Twitter that regularly opines on the attire choices of electeds on both sides of the aisle, dragging them for wearing sporty shoes with suits or jackets that are too tight and too short and showing too much of that gap down here. I mean, he drags everybody, and he thinks, or someone like him might think, that people who are just bad dressers are disrespecting the office.
I mean, look, I'm not going to go that far. Granted, I'm wearing a blazer with peak lapels, and I'm very particular about the length of my tie, etc. So I understand that, but that's a part of being reared at Morehouse undergrad. That's a part of coming from a great-grandfather who's a West Point military graduate. When you step out of the house, you represent not only yourself, your family, and your community. I fundamentally believe that. With that said, I go back to my point. We have to stop lessening every expectation we have in this country. I agree with you, Bree. There are a host of other serious issues that surely have a greater impact on the average American person. But I also think that this is critical as we talk about our culture and the direction that we're moving. And a lot of Americans feel that we're moving in a wrong direction. And I think this is part and parcel, a part of that idea that we're just lessening all standards. It doesn't matter about values. Customs of behavior no longer matter. Be whoever you are, dress however you want to dress, say whatever you want to say, do whatever you want to do. No one cares. I don't want to live in a society like that.
So there's 2 big stories about congressional faux pas. One is that Fetterman wears sweatpants. Another is that Lauren Boebert was groping publicly and vaping in a venue with children and families present. It was a pregnant woman who tried to get her to stop several times. She came out of the theater after being pulled by the staff, gave the middle finger to people around her, etc. Now, again, I'm not trying to just whataboutism this.
That's a fair critique, though.
But that, to me, even that is not as substantive as the war and the funding and the homelessness and all the things that they're really dropping the ball on. But it just feels like I'm prepared to care about none of it.
But her behavior also is appalling to me. As a Christian, I was always raised, and even as a young man, I remember my dad and my uncles and my grandfather, my great-grandfather when he was still alive. You conduct yourself in a certain kind of way in public when you're with a woman. When you're around children, certain behavior, certain language is not to be used. One day you will be a father. Open the door for your wife. Never raise your voice at your wife. All of those things matter, Bree. And we have to stop degrading these time-tested standards because we want to be woke, or because we want to modernize, or because we want to be different and fluid, if you will. What does that even mean?
Well, I think the reason technically is that John Fetterman people are feeling sympathy for him.
I have
because he had
zero
a
sympathy.
stroke.
I have zero
and
sympathy.
is having mobility issues and speech issues, and people want to extend to him a little bit of flexibility. Now, of course, he dressed like that prior to having a stroke. My feeling is this. I think a lot of folks who don't like to dress up do so because they don't know the power of how good and powerful can feel.
Sure.
They don't know how to dress. Maybe they have, Fetterman's a very tall, kind of big guy. Maybe he has struggled to find things that he looks good and comfortable and feels comfortable in. I used to love a show, I know Robby loved this show as well, called What Not to Wear, where there were these two hosts, Stacey and Clinton, who took people who were nominated by their families who had no interest in looking better, gave them makeovers, and by the end of the show, they were standing taller, feeling better, and saying, wow, why haven't I been doing this their whole lives?
Did they like the makeovers?
They always loved the makers, even though they resisted up until the end. And so I would say this, what we need for John Fetterman is not a rule change that forces him into something that makes him uncomfortable. I think that we can lead him there with a carrot by simply giving him a makeover, introducing him to some chicer athletic wear perhaps, maybe layer a sweatshirt under a blazer. I mean, there's things we can do that I think will make him want to look more presentable.
You can modernize a suit. I mean, a lot of my friends, I don't always agree with it, but you can modernize a suit. You can make it more comfortable. There are looser fabrics, fabrics that breathe better for a larger guy who may have a propensity to sweat more, may need more room, if you will. We can make that happen for John. But John, put on a darn suit, man.
Let's get Steve Harvey and some of those NBA guys on the case who deal with the bigger frame.
We can make that happen, okay?
All right, well, tomorrow on Rising, Amber Athey and Amisha Cross will be with you to bring you the latest edition of Rising Fridays. Sure, Michael, it has been a blast.
Bree, it's always a pleasure being with you, and I love the Rising audience.
All right, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the move, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.